Hi, I'm Alex Baer with Digital Research, and I'm here in downtown San Francisco with the chairman and founder of AppDynamics, Jyoti Bansal. Hi there.
Hi, I'm Jyoti Bansal, founder and chairman of AppDynamics.
Great, thank you. So, what is AppDynamics?
AppDynamics is in a space called application intelligence. Application intelligence is about making sure the software applications your business builds, they work very well. So if there is say if you're doing online banking, or you're doing online retail, or you're using some mobile applications, and these applications are having some kind of bad experiences for the users. What AppDynamics does with application intelligence is to make sure that we detect those and also allow people to fix them very quickly, so people can have really good experiences. So people can run better and better online and software-driven businesses.
Okay, excellent. So you mentioned banking and retail. Are those your typical types of customers, or is it pretty broad in terms of who you serve?
It's very broad. If you look at what's happening right now, every business is starting to become a software business. So the interface of how businesses engage with their consumers is driven through software applications. So retail is like that, bank is like that. If you look at transportation, you don't buy your tickets for the train from a person, you buy them through some kind of a software interface. So if you look at insurance, same kind of thing. So pretty much every business is becoming a software defined business. And we help any of these businesses as they go through that.
Okay, excellent. So I understand you serve a ton of different famous companies. Can you mention some of the companies you work with in the US and also in Japan?
Sure. We work with about 1,600 or so large enterprise companies. And we were, in the US, the companies will be some of the large banks, like say a Barclays Bank or a JP Morgan Chase or a Wells Fargo, or some of the very large consumer sites like Expedia.com or Priceline.com or Edmunds.com, or even companies like Microsoft or Salesforce.com, technology companies. In Japan, we have many customers as well. Sony, Rakuten. We have Golf Digest Online. We have a few more like that.
Okay, excellent. So amongst those famous companies, or even the less famous ones, is there one success story that really jumps out to you that you feel really sort of communicates the business value of AppDynamics?
Sure. I think the one that jumps out to me is this company called Pearson Education. Pearson Education is one of the largest online education companies in the world. And if you look at how education is transforming, education is becoming all digital. It's all classrooms that are becoming virtual classrooms over time. So instead of buying books, people want to get to more of virtual classrooms, online classrooms. But imagine if you go into those virtual classrooms and something doesn't work, your experience is bad, things are slow, or things are failing. So we were able to help Pearson Education improve the performance of their online properties by almost 10 to 15 times. We were able to help them in getting the mean time to resolution of problems in that order of magnitude different as well. So we take a lot of pride in what we do helps through a lot of the digital transformation that's happening in the world.
Okay, excellent. So obviously there's competitors out there, but why do you think Pearson and JP Morgan and these companies chose AppDynamics over these other providers?
Well, our competitors are these very legacy kind of companies like IBM and HP and Computer Associates, PMC, and these companies have really not built the level of monitoring and intelligence that our product has that's required for these modern application architectures. These companies have not built that. So we have a huge competitive advantage in how we think about solving this problem. And the core of the competitive differentiator comes in how we think about what should you care about. Traditionally, everyone have provided monitoring from the lens of infrastructure, that how your servers are performing, how your networks are performing, how your databases are performing. We provide monitoring from the lens of the user, that what experience the user is having. And then you start from that, and then you look inside what's happening at the code level, what's happening in the networks, what's happening in the server. So we change the way of thinking around it, and that's what makes us so different. And that's why all these large enterprises are choosing AppDynamics now.
Okay, good stuff. So you mentioned there's a lot of these legacy applications that companies have been using for years and years and years. So AppDynamics, how do you sort of integrate with legacy systems that companies are still using. Like let's say Japanese customer is using some local niche tool. Does App Dynamics easily integrate with those other tools?
Yes, definitely. So our philosophy is that we have to be very open and very integrable with everything. So we can consume data from other systems, and our data can go into other systems, and we have open APIs for most of those. Because we know we have to coexist with a lot of legacy systems and legacy applications, as well as modern systems running in the cloud. All of that happens at the same time.
Okay, excellent. So let's change gears a little bit, and I want to ask about what you were doing before App Dynamics. I understand you were in India studying there. That's where you're from, and you came to the US. Could you talk a little bit about that story?
Sure. So I studied computer science in India. I went to college there, and after college, I wanted to come to Silicon Valley. So I came here with just a few $100s to start a career here. There's a lot of software innovation happens in Silicon Valley, and I worked in a few startups because I knew that startups are where a lot of high-paced innovation happens. So I was building a lot of software applications for these startups, and what I realized was the world of software is changing. There's just more and more impact is being driven through software experiences. You don't go to a bank anymore. You use the bank through their online banking or mobile banking. A lot of the how do you do grocery shopping is starting to become more through software. You don't call an insurance agent anymore. You use an insurance kind of app. So more and more software is changing our life. And what I found was if something goes wrong with the software, it's still very hard to figure out why something is wrong and how to fix it and how to avoid that in future. And a different technology approach would be needed to solve that. And I worked in some of the legacy providers for a little bit, and I realized that these companies are not going to be able to innovate to solve that. So that's when I decided I got to start solving this problem. So I quit my job, started App Dynamics. One of the great things about Silicon Valley is that it's the ecosystem for new startups, the venture capital, the access to really talented engineers is very strong here. So if you're trying to solve a big problem, even though it's risky, you can attract people to join you. Even if you're very small, you can raise capital if your idea makes sense.
Okay, excellent. There's definitely a great environment here for all that. That being said, there's always risks and challenges in the early days of a startup. So could you talk about that first year or two? What were the biggest challenges of founding a company?
Sure. For every startup, a startup is a very high risk thing. If you look at some of the statistics, out of the 30,000 software startups that start, only 1,500 go to raising venture capital. Out of 1,500 companies that do get to raising venture capital, only about 5% of them get to say $10 million of annual sales. So it's very high risk business, right? So the challenges in the early days are really about you have to have capital to start. Either you bootstrap in some way or you raise capital from investors. So that's the first step, that you have to make sure you have that. But the second part all comes about creating product market fit. That you have a thesis that there is problem in the market. But to develop the product that will solve the problem in the market and something that people will pay for. So that is the hardest part that you have to do. If you find the right product market fit, you can build a business around it after that. Right? So it goes into these kind of stages. Stage one is you have to find some capital to get started. Stage two is you have to find the product market fit, and that takes about a year, 2 years for these kind of enterprise technology kind of products. And then stage three is once you found the initial product market fit, you figure out how to sell the product that you build. Right? So for us in the initial, the first 2 years, it was all about finding the product market fit, which has two elements to it, like building the product. But second is working very closely with potential customers to make sure that the product is solving the problems that they have, and that they will pay for solving those problems.
Okay, excellent. So it took about a year or two to get product market fit. Could you talk about that moment and when you knew this is it, we got it, let's move forward?
Sure. I think the moment when you know you have product market fit is when someone pays money to solve some problems with your product. right? So my philosophy is simple. There is no, the only thing is like when people are paying money for it. So the goal we set for, like, if we once we get 5 enterprise customers who are paying us to solve problems, that's when we know we have a product market fit. And these enterprises are not easy customers to sell to. Like, you can't go into a bank or a large or a large travel company or a large retailer and convince them to buy from a 10% company. Like, so if they are convinced to spend money with a 10% company, that means they find the product valuable enough for their problem, and that's when you have the initial product market fit.
Okay, excellent. So you've already sort of given some advice, but do you have any specific advice for startup founders who want to be like you one day?
Sure. I think to me, I would say the first advice would be, if you really believe in something, do it, try it. There's no, you don't want to regret that you didn't even try. So that would be my first piece of advice. It's always hard. It's it's easier to say that. It's always hard to quit your job and try something and take a risk. But if you really believe in something, I would advise you should do it. Then once a company is started, my advice always is like focus on customers. The only thing that matters is customers. You have to find the product market fit, which is really the only way you find it is by focusing on customers. That build what customers care about, what customers will pay you for, and then once you can find the product market fit, don't lose that focus. Focus on customers when you sell, that you're making them successful, that you're really taking care of them. And if you do that, a lot of things just align around that automatically. So that would be my primary advice to any founder.
Okay, I think that's great advice. So you better wrap soon, but I have 2 final questions for you. First, what's next for AppDynamics?
Sure. For AppDynamics, we believe that software will continue to redefine more and more of the business out there. Every business will continue to transform more and more to software. So we want to continue to expand how we can help these businesses as they go through their transformation. So we look at AppDynamics, we started by understanding the performance of these applications, and if something went wrong, to help people understand why something went wrong and to fix that very quickly. The next phase for us to really take it to the business level, that if something is going wrong in the applications and people are having a bad experience, how do we tie it back to your business? What's the impact your business is having? How much revenue are you losing? How much profit you could have otherwise? Which of your customers had a bad experience and you couldn't retain because of that? So that's the next phase for us, that we are taking AppDynamics from performance monitoring and troubleshooting to the realm of how do we tie it to the business, so the business intelligence kind of realm, but the two combined together in a seamless way.
Okay, excellent. So if you want to learn more or potentially even try out AppDynamics, what should they do?
The best way is to go to appdynamics.com. We have a Japanese version of AppDynamics, www.appdynamics.co.jp. There's a free trial of the product, so you can just sign up and start trying out the product. We have a very strong sales presence in Japan as well. So you can from our website you can contact our sales team and they can get back to you very quickly.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. Best of luck.
Yeah, thank you so much.